You know, this movie is infamous for having so many spoilers that for a while people weren't allowed to talk about it. In fact, Thanos himself demanded our silence. To that, I have this to say. I saw the movie. It's been a week now. Lots of people know what happened. So guess what? This silence is about to be broken. And you know what, Thanos? There's nothing you can do about that. You want to know why? Because I got the Infinity Stones now. That's right. I know they look like dice, but trust me, they're not dice. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Bow before me, my mortal and immortal friends, for I am now the master manipulator of time, space, mind, soul, power, and reality. That being said, let's talk about Avengers Infinity War. This is Thumb Together. I am, of course, Andrew Fantasia. Thank you for watching me. As always, if you enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. What can be said about this movie, man? What can be said? And I put off talking about it for many reasons. One, because of, I wanted to avoid spoiling it for people. Two, I wanted to make this review a little more special than normal because this movie is more special than normal. And three, I wanted to understand what I could say that wouldn't make me just another person talking about, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then these things went down. The end. Subscribe to my channel. I didn't want to just be that. So in lieu of that, I think the best way to make this video a little bit different is to talk to you about what this movie's existence means to me right here. Personally, I gotta say, it is truly something special. It's something more than just what was on the screen. And what was on the screen was pretty damn sexy, and I promise we'll get to that throughout the course of this video. But let me start off with the following. My parents have been divorced since I was a baby. So I was always, that kid with the divorced parents. I would see my dad, every other weekend. And Dad and I had a lot of common interests. Two things that he was really fond of was going to the movies and going to a comic book store. Dad loved them both. When I would get together with him on these weekends, usually we would do one or sometimes both. We would go see a movie. When I was little, there weren't really a lot of superhero movies, but we'd go see the closest approximation of one because he loved superheroes too. Or we would go to a comic book store, but we wouldn't buy comics. I was never really into comics as a kid. I owned a few, and I'd flip through and be like, yay, Superman punched a robot. Giddy up. But the comic book fascination kind of skipped over me. Instead, what Dad and I used to do, and we spent many, many years having fun doing this, was we would collect trading cards. Not baseball cards or anything like that, but, comic book, DC and Marvel trading cards. And that's kind of a dying art. I'm sure trading cards still get made. I know Topps is still cranking out the Star Wars ones. But in today's era of, everything being digital and also of cards being primarily used for gaming, it's becoming a rarer and rarer thing. I just don't see kids walking down the street saying, hey, I got it, I need it, I got it, I'll trade you these. You just don't see that happening anymore. So of all the things we've lost over the years that I love, trading cards is among the most important to me. And this right here, this binder, which weighs a lot, this is a binder that is full to bursting with all the old school comic book trading cards that Dad and I used to collect back in the day. And in fact, Dad liked this card so much of Spider-Man was his favorite, that he cut this so it was just skinny enough to fit in here. And he said, there you go, now you can use it as like a spine decoration. Still there to this day. Now, we went through many series of different cards over the years, but one of the ones that I really, really enjoyed was this one right here. It's a Marvel Comics series from a company called Skybox, and these came out in 1993. So I would have been 6 years old while we were collecting these. Now, this series here was really cool because it took into consideration the fact that dorks like me would buy one of these binders and put their cards in it. So every 9 cards is actually one big picture. See that? Isn't that clever? So it's one giant picture there. And actually, as you can see, there's Loki right there. There's our boy Loki. Right above him, there's Doctor Strange. And right down there at the bottom, that's Thor. Actually, fun fact, most of the cards in this binder are the originals that I used to get with my dad. Like, these were from those days. But this particular set I had lost in the shuffle of moving years and years ago. So for this particular set, I purchased it all again from scratch from vendors at like Fan Expo and such. So these, when it comes to this set, these are not the exact ones that my little 6-year-old self was holding. However, this was my first introduction to Loki. This was actually my first introduction to a lot of Marvel. I owe this series for it. And there's something very special about this series that I want to share with you. There's a point to all this, I promise. Out of all the cards in this set, and there were about 150 or so, my 2 favorite cards were these cards right here. This first one, as you can see, is Drax. This is Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. This has been one of my favorite trading cards since 1993. And the second one is Thanos. Something about these 2 cards, as a kid, I adored them. I always used to like reading the back, of a card and learning about a character. And to be honest, this set didn't really have a whole lot going on information-wise. I mean, as you can see here, they've got, nice little pictures, and there's like a little bar down here at the bottom where they say some more interesting things, and then they do this little power scale where it's like, hey, this is how tough he is, this is how swift he is, or some crap. But these 2 cards, the way the characters looked, the way their costumes were, I found them amazing. Just from reading the cards, I knew that Drax was not a fan of Thanos, and that Thanos was a big meanie, and he was doing some bad things. And I could be wrong, but that might even be the Infinity Gauntlet in his hand. One thing I always loved about Drax was that this card clearly states that he is, in fact, a hero. He's not a villain. He's a superhero. But as a kid, I would look at this card and think, that looks like no other superhero I've ever seen. He doesn't have the classic red, white, and blue color scheme. He's not smiling. He's not wearing underwear. He's a big, scary green monster in a purple cape. He looks like a villain, but he's not. That really attracted me to these 2. And like I said, their mythology is covered a bit more in more cards. That's how I knew that there was a connection. But Drax and Thanos have been in the back of my mind since 1993, thanks to these. When the Avengers movie came out, the first one, and we got that little tease at the end with Thanos, that made my heart skip a beat a bit. I was like, wow, we're going to see Thanos. We're going to see this freaking guy in a movie. That's insane. Then Guardians of the Galaxy was being made, and I heard about the cast and what characters were going to be in it. At first, I'm looking through the character list, and the only character who I recognized was Rocket Raccoon. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy before. Then I read the list again, and I saw this guy. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's going to be in a movie. And I just about plotzed at that point. I could not believe what I was seeing. Then slowly but surely, we got Infinity War. 25 years after the release of Marvel Skybox trading cards. 25 years later. I saw these 2 dudes finally come head to head on the big screen. Despite everything that happened in this movie, the crumbling characters and the Battle of Wakanda and the appearance of long thought dead people and so on, despite all of that, seeing this happen hit me right in the feels. A 25-year side quest in my life, for lack of a better term, suddenly got completed. That to me was the most beautiful moment of Avengers Infinity War, despite everything else that had happened. And it's funny how things worked out, because after I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, I walked away from that saying, you know what? My favorite character in that movie was Drax, hands down. And after I watched Avengers Infinity War, I walked out of that movie and I thought, you know what? My favorite character in that movie was Thanos, hands down. 2 favorite cards in the set. What are the odds of that happening 25 years later? All I know is I saw something special. I saw the culmination of 25 years of fandom from, to be honest, a guy who did not know a whole lot about these 2. I knew one was bad and one was good and they both looked cool, but because I did not read the comic books, I only had these little snippets of information to go on. Now, it's been a long time since I've bought trading cards. I don't even know if Marvel and DC make them anymore. And a couple years ago, unfortunately, I lost my father. He passed away. So that whole legacy of spending a weekend with him, going to random comic book shops I've never even heard of around the city. I don't know how he found them, but he found them. Into some random store and finding some random card about some random dude who I've never heard of but ends up being my favorite because his card looks neat. Those days are gone now. And for this movie to come along and to put a nice little bow on all of that, I can't yet explain how. It moved me in a way that no other superhero movie has managed to move me. A crazy story that's essentially about a big purple dilf who's running around looking for multicolored jewels because he likes bling, ended up being one of the most touching things I've ever seen, and one of the most awe-inspiring things I've ever seen. A much better critic than I am once made a great point about the first Avengers movie and said that once we get to the part where all the Avengers are together in New York and they're standing around in that circle, at that point, the rest of the movie is just a celebration of the fact that it exists. It's like a fireworks display saying, yep, we did it. We actually made this happen. I could not agree more with that. I think that that's very true. I mean, it was a 5-movie journey to get to that point. This is the next step of that, I think. It's unlike anything that has been made. I hope we get more things like this in the future. I hope we get more giant movies like this. Like I said before, in my very first episode of Thumb Together that I ever did, Justice League should have been as important. It should have been this level of importance. Because when push comes to shove, the characters in Justice League are so much more iconic than the characters of the Avengers. They just are. I mean, before 2008, how many of you had really heard about Iron Man and Thor and Captain America and Hawkeye and Rocket Raccoon? How many of you really knew what those characters were all about? On the other flip side, you knew about Wonder Woman and Batman and Superman and the Flash and the Green Lantern because they are big deals. I'm so happy that this movie, which should have been a big deal, was in fact a very big deal, and the people responsible treated it as such. Now, having said that, I waited a week to stew on it to make sure that when I say this out loud, it's not hyperbole. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that despite personal attachments, Avengers Infinity War still manages to be a masterpiece. There are so many ways this could have gone wrong. In the movie, Doctor Strange says to Iron Man that there were 14 million different outcomes that he saw, and only one of them in which they won. And knowing the way cinema has worked in the past, I can't help but feel like that's kind of a meta joke. There are probably more than 14 million ways that this movie could have been garbage. But somehow, the Russo brothers, Kevin Feige, the cast and crew of this movie came together and they were like, you know what? We're not settling for those 14 million. We're not going to turn off the cameras or call it a day until we're at that one, until we have beaten those odds. And I think that they have. I think that they have pulled an Avengers-like feat. They have pulled a victory out of a situation where it was almost impossible for them to win. Against all odds, they made something that held up to 10 years of hype, which is not easy. That gave every character in the movie at least one moment to remind us why we love that character, which is not easy. They gave us a villain who can be both sympathetic and terrifying, which is not easy. They told us a story where we spend the whole movie in our seats literally thinking, I don't know how the good guys are going to win. And that's not easy. I could go on and on. I could list all the things that they did that we take for granted just how complicated these things are to do. And they did them all like a juggling act without dropping a ball once. Now, of course, this is YouTube, so I'm sure that 5 months from now, there's going to be about 2 million videos that are going up all over YouTube saying, here's 10 reasons why Infinity War is not as good as we remember it. Here's 5 places where Infinity War dropped the ball. Because that always happens. What was my favorite aspect of this movie? Well, I would have to say it is the villains. The key word there is villains, not villain. Obviously, Thanos rocked it. Quick sidebar about this dude. Ever since I saw the movie, I have been looking online for like a nice action figure of this guy, like a nice, good quality Thanos action figure, but a movie one, not a comic book one. And it is hard to find, man. He's one of those like build-a-figure things, so like if I want to get him, I gotta buy like 6 other figures at like $34 each, and then they each come with a piece of Thanos. And I'm like, ugh, if I was rich, I'd do it, because I really want that, but nah. And it's either that or like some 12-inch one that's like all hollow and cheap, and it will literally break the second I take it out of the box, so no thank you. So Thanos really impressed me, but what I was even happier about was the Black Circle. Now, the Black Circle is, again, I'm not a comic book guy. I was familiar with 2 of them. just by name. I knew that Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive were a thing because I had heard their name once in something ages ago. Now, one thing that I thought has always been missing from these Avengers movies is the idea of multiple villains. And I don't just mean, there's 5 aliens running at the Avengers, because we've gotten that. We've gotten the Chitauri, we've gotten the Ultron robot clones, and in this one we have those 4-armed things, whatever the hell they're supposed to be. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, for example, has 3 main villains. It has Colonel Vogel, it has Walter Donovan, and Elsa Schneider. Each of these villains is very powerful and poses a very real threat to Indiana Jones and his friends. They're not just, a Nazi with a gun. They're not pawns. They're the bigger guys on the chessboard. Every Marvel movie so far, I think every Marvel movie too, not just every Avengers movie, has done that with the villains, where it's been, there's your king, there's your villain, your main villain, but the rest of the bad guys, if there are any, are just pawns. And what I really liked about Infinity War was you've got your king, but you've also got some more of the big folks. You've got a queen and a bishop and a rook and a knight hanging out with that king. We got that with the Black Circle. We got Corvus Glaive, we got Proxima Midnight, we got the big guy whose name I don't remember, and we got the Ebony Maw, who's my favorite. And just like any good movie with multiple villains like that, they don't go out cheaply. It's not just like, here comes a pawn, I'm going to punch him and he's down for the count. Like, these guys, they put up a fight, and it's a big deal to take one of them out. And throughout the course of the movie, all 4 members of the Black Circle get taken out by our heroes, but it's always a challenge, and it's always a really good fight. For me, the fight between Black Widow and Okoye and Proxima Midnight was really, really cool. And I also love that, every member of the Black Circle faced off against a group of Avengers at some point early in the movie, and then got away, and then came back to fight again. That was so great. I love when that happens. I love when they establish these rivalries that continue throughout the film. Proxima Midnight went after Vision and Scarlet Witch, and I think she's the one who stabbed Vision, if I'm not mistaken. So she was messing with their groove from early on in the film, and Scarlet Witch is like, I'm not having that. And you've got this rivalry all of a sudden now. Proxima Midnight gets away, Battle of Wakanda happens, she goes after Scarlet Witch, and then there's another fight, and Scarlet Witch ends up being the one to take her down. And, it's nice. It puts a little ribbon on that moment we saw early in the film when they're in Scotland, I think, where Proxima Midnight messed up Vision and Wanda's romantic walk. Wanda's like, no, you're not, I don't like you. You mess with me and my boy. And she takes out Proxima Midnight. Those little moments, those little connections between a hero and a villain are fantastic, and I love them. And I really, really, really hope that moving forward, Marvel continues to do this. Some movies in the MCU have introduced 2 villains. Like, for example, Iron Man 2 had a couple villains. So did Guardians. So did Thor the Dark World, but they didn't utilize them in this manner. I mean, in Thor the Dark World, you had 2 villains. You had the main Dark Elf, and you had like his assistant. And his assistant gets turned into a monster at some point, but he dies very early on, I think. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But taking out the assistant wasn't a moment, as far as I remember. It wasn't as big a moment as taking out a member of the Black Circle. And each time a member of the Black Circle got defeated by the Avengers, it was a hurrah kind of moment. And it was spread out too, because it's not a short movie. The Marvel Universe is so rich and full of so many different villain characters that I really, really hope in the future we'll see more of this start to happen. Like I said, I was not familiar with these characters before I saw Infinity War, but now I want a poster of the Maw on my wall because he was awesome. I want to name my first child Proxima Midnight because that is a bitchin' name. And see what happens? All of a sudden, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of those characters, and I wasn't before. And I think that the Marvel Universe is full of villains like that. They're full of villains that I have never heard of once who can come to the forefront of things and make me excited to see them. So that would be my favorite aspect of Infinity War, if I had to choose. Now, I don't want this video to be 9 hours long, so let's just cut to the chase. Let's talk about the big deal. Let's talk about the end of this movie and what it could mean moving forward. We lost so many of our heroes to the snap. What's going to happen next? How are we going to get those people back? Are we going to get them back? I have a weird theory. It would be great for us because it would just mean we get even more movies than we already have. But it's just a matter of whether this is the way Marvel wants to go. Here's what I'm thinking. In the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, there's this cool little story arc they did where an episode begins, the turtles are all in their lair in the sewer and they're just hanging out and doing whatever and just, shooting the shit. And this villain appears, he teleports into their lair and he's got this magic staff that can distort time and space. It's a very powerful staff. kind of like the Time Stone. Heyo. And this villain has it out for the turtles. So what he does is he waves the staff and he says, I'm going to send you to time and space, and and he twirls the staff and he wipes them out, and all the turtles disappear. And the beginning of the episode, we were focused on Michelangelo because he was having a problem with something. So we continue to follow Michelangelo, and he wakes up in this parallel universe where the turtles are not ninjas, but they're comic book type superheroes, and they're doing some crazy mission, whatever, and he joins them on their mission. And every once in a while, he keeps phasing in and out, like as if he's trying to be pulled back to his own reality. And by the end of the episode, he's helped out this alternate version of his brothers, and then he's like, whoa, I'm finally phasing out, bye guys, and he disappears. And the episode ends like that. And the next episode in the series starts the exact same way, except this time we follow Raphael and we see where he went. And he goes to another crazy dimension on some other planet, and he has an adventure. And so on. Next episode's about Donatello. Next episode's about Leonardo. And then the next episode after that is about the four of them getting back home and stopping that villain with the time sphere thing from doing any more bad shit. First of all, what a brilliant, cool idea for a kid's cartoon. I mean, that's awesome. Like, kudos to Ninja Turtles. But that gave me an inkling of an idea about what we could expect to see moving forward. Now, again, this is a long shot, I think, but this is something I would really like to see is, what if those people who disappeared, who faded away into nothingness, just ended up being sent to an alternate dimension or something along those lines? Like, for example, let's take Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. We know they both have movies coming out. We know there's going to be a Spider-Man 2 and we know there's going to be a Doctor Strange 2. But what if in the interim of that, before that happens, there are a series of movies that Marvel puts out called, for lack of a better term, Elseworlds. July 2019, we get Spider-Man Elseworlds. And it's about where Peter Parker went when he vanished. And he's on some weird extra-dimensional thing. And maybe he's in a parallel universe where Tony Stark became a megalomaniacal tyrant and he rules the world. And Iron Man is like this big, scary Darth Vader dude who's always watching you. It's basically like Iron Hitler. And Tony Stark rules everything with an iron fist. No pun intended. And Peter Parker has this adventure in this world throughout the movie. And at the end of the movie, he gets phased back to reality. And we're like, what happened? We don't know yet. You got to see Avengers 5 to know what happened or what have you. Doctor Strange can end up in another time and place entirely where Scarlet Witch is queen of another planet and she enlists his help to fight off an alien invasion, but the aliens are Earthlings who are coming to invade her planet. Like the craziest, comic bookiest crap you could think of. And that's the Elseworlds Doctor Strange movie. And at the end of that movie, he gets phased away and he's like, I knew it, I'm being sent back to my original world. All these heroes come back as we know them in Avengers 4 or Avengers 5. And then we carry on with their series. And then the next Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man 2, the next Homecoming, or what have you. But these Elseworlds things could be very much a possibility. It's expensive for Marvel because they got to make more movies. But for us, it's a win for us because we just get, we're getting Spider-Man 2, but we're also getting Spider-Man Elseworlds. We're getting Guardians 3, but we're also getting Guardians Elseworlds. I could really dig that. I could go for that. And you would see all these creative parallel universes, and they could have so much room to play and create new things and maybe bring some characters from those universes into the current Marvel universe, like, say, the Silver Surfer or the Fantastic Four, all dependent on what world they travel to. I think that would be super, super cool. I'm pulling for that. That's what I want to see. If they don't do that, I'm not going to, take my ball and go home. I'm still going to be a happy camper. But that's what I think. Let me know. What do you think is going to happen? Where is the MCU going next? But that's it. That's Avengers Infinity War. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about one of the most talked about movies of all time. I can't wait to see it again. I've only seen it once. This puppy needs some more infinity in his life. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Andrew Fantasia. Thanks again, and I will see you all here next time. Until then, adios. So I could use this stone to turn back the clock to before Meghan Markle met Prince Harry. Then I could use this stone to make myself look more attractive and make Meghan Markle notice me. I could use this stone to make myself more powerful and prince-like, since that seems to be her type. I could use this stone to make myself smarter and more intellectual so I can impress Meghan Markle with witty banter. And I could use this stone to sing her my favorite soul songs of the 70s. I think she'd like that. This one will just be a backup, because I can't remember what it does.